Righty, so I'll get started here. I'm going to talk about exploring the Salton Sea, and we'll do some photography too. But a lot of it is what you do to get there, and what you see, and what it's like, and how to get around there, because it's not straightforward. For those of you that may not know, the Salton Sea is kind of a strange place. It started out as a ongoing environmental disaster in 1905 when they broke the dikes on the Colorado River and flooded it. It's one of those come and go geologic seas. It's come and gone multiple times. And the latest time started in 1905. And then in the 1950s and 60s, as you see from those pictures, it was the hotspot to go to for everything. Movie stars and boat racing and boats and swimming and water skiing, you name it. And they built a lot of these developments, like you see that North Shore beach down there. It was also, since it's in the middle of the Mojave Desert, that's what I just said, the go-to destination. It's been a host to a lot of things. There's been a couple military bases. There are some old fighter planes that are on the bottom of it. They've done experiments. There's lots of land speculation that went on there. It's still there. You can go there and you can buy a lot for a song, and you'll get some dirt. There's lots of myths about it. I don't know if they have a monster that lives in it like other lakes, but I'm sure there's other things. It's been soaking up all the fertilizers and salts all throughout the 20th century, and it's slowly getting more and more and more toxic. And because it became toxic, all the land speculation crashed, all the development crashed. There's really no money there. People have bought houses 40, 50 years ago. They thought they were going to retire there. There were marinas. If you see that marina where it says North Shore Beach, those marinas are just dirt now. The people that live there can watch the dust blow, and that's about it. So it's a lot of ruins, and the ruins are, I'll talk more about them. There's a lot of lithium on the bottom of it that comes off the farm fields and comes out of the geothermal energy. So there's probably going to be lithium mining at some point that'll put a tiny bit of money there, but I wouldn't expect a lot. And it's shrinking because they started agricultural management of water. There's less and less water just running into it. The ruins are basically ruins. They're not like Bodie at all. They're not taken care of. They're not supported. They're not funded. They just sit there until somebody with a few dollars comes along and tears them down. And there's less and less access every year. The state of California blocks off parts of it for experiments, and they've got some water settling ponds that the state has put in. You know, they try to pretend they're doing a little environmental work there. They spend a couple bucks in Kern County and put these things to precipitate out some of the contaminants from the farm country, but there's a lot of date farms. And each time one of those things goes in, they cut off more and more access to the sea itself. So it's kind of vanishing. What it was 10 years ago isn't what it is today, and in another 10 years, it'll be something different. So you go to Palm Springs and you keep driving, go through Coachella, Indio, on Highway 86 is the main drag to get down there, the freeway. And if you look at this map on the right side, I stayed in Brawley, and I'll talk about that. Westmoreland and Brawley are really the two places to stay, basically Brawley. There's no other place to stay there unless you want to camp out. And then Imperial County extends all the way down to Mexico and El Centro and places like that. There's all kinds of legends out there in the desert. There's supposed to be a vanished Spanish ship out there that came down the Colorado River and stuff. It's like the desert around Phoenix. You know, there's all kinds of myths and stuff. So it's fun to go down there and see all that stuff. What is it today? It's really off the grid because there's no money. There's only one kind of tourism there, and that's off-road vehicles. A little bit of hunting, a little bit of photography. A lot of young people go there to photograph. But other than that, it's really off the grid. There's no signs, there's no visitor centers, there's no golf. There are some accommodations that aren't too bad. There were a couple restaurants I saw, about half or three-quarters of them were boarded up because of COVID. But even if they had been open, what I'm talking about, a handful. There's no entertainment for non-photographers. So if you go with a non-photographer, they may not like you because they won't have anything to do unless they're an ATV, and then they can go out and roar around the desert and you can do photography. There's no markings to where you go. The shore is unmarked. There's no signs. Some of it is blocked by date farms. Some of it is blocked by the state. Some of it is blocked by a few businesses. And the roads are kind of falling apart that go down to the shore. But the way you find them is what I'm going to talk about. You have to plan how to find everything before you go, because you're not going to find a sign that's going to tell you go there. I really recommend a four-wheel drive vehicle because you're going to be going on and off roads to get to things. And with your car, it can be stressful to do that. So if you go there, rent a four-wheel drive, or if you have a four-wheel drive SUV, or you can borrow one, it makes it a lot less stressful of a trip, because some of the places you come to, the road just stops and you keep going off-road. You aren't in Rancho Mirage anymore, Toto. It's a different world than anything around the valley there. When to visit? I'm going to suggest something that's a little different. I suggest you go in the off season when it's hot, between May and October. May, early June, September. I went in September. October is when the off-road vehicle people start to show up. And there are thousands of them come there. And there's hunters. There are some photo safaris I saw advertised. They charge about $900. They run them in January. They basically, you stay in Brawley and they take you out when the sun comes up and you stand on the shore with your tripod and take a couple pictures of the Salton Sea. That doesn't really show you what you're going to find there. You don't get to explore when you do that. And if you go there in January, what few hotel rooms there are going to be long ago booked. There's going to be ATV and off-roaders everywhere. And there's going to be photographers. And for me personally, it's just not as much fun to do that. The temperatures in September when I went were anywhere from 98 to 105. And it's 1 or 2% humidity. And there's not many people around. So it's very nice. I mean, you can go places and there's just nobody there. And you can set up and take pictures and snoop around. It's much more enjoyable to do it that way. If you take a day or two to adjust in the right clothes, the weather in early summer and late fall really isn't a deterrent. You just get used to not using air conditioning in your car. You turn the air conditioning in the room up to 75 to 85 for a day or two, and you will adjust very quickly to the heat. Wear a hat, wear sunscreen, acclimate a little bit, and the temperature isn't off-putting because you're going to be driving a lot, and you put on low air conditioning in your car and drive where you're going and get out and take pictures and hop back in your car and drive somewhere else. It is the desert. It doesn't cool off at night. When the sun goes down, it's usually around 100. But it feels a lot cooler because the heat of the sun isn't shining on you. Like I said, off-roading is huge there, all over the place. In the cooler months is when they show up. People have vacation homes, parking spaces for their RVs, conventions, you name it. There's hunters, photographers, snowbirds. lost tourists. So it's busier in the cooler times. And if that's when the only time you're able to go, I recommend going, but just be advised there'll be a lot more activity around it. It'll be a little harder to just get out and explore by yourself. There's no surplus of accommodations or amenities. You don't just drive down there and look for a motel room and a restaurant to eat when you get there, because it isn't there. There's a casino on the road. There's truck stops. There's grocery stores. There's a couple motels, and there's a couple tiny restaurants. That's about it. And what do you want to take when you go there? Take adventure gear, pack for somewhere that's a little off the trail where you're going to go and have the right things to go. You need the clothes for whichever season you're going to go, and a big hat. Take first aid, prescriptions, OTC meds, sunscreen, and the dust can blow there. Take water and food, keep it in your car, maps, lights, blankets, hiking gear, tools. You're not going somewhere where you can pull into a gas station and have your car fixed. So and if you're four-wheel drive, you're going to have to get somewhere if you're out there and your car breaks down. Camera gear is just everybody on this webinar knows what to take: a couple bodies and a cell phone. I took a short zoom and a long zoom. That's the only two lenses I took. Extra batteries, data cards, chargers. I had a tripod. I used it once. The thing I suggest you take is a flash, and something with a guide number about 60 is good. So you can shoot maybe 30, 40 feet with it in the dark. And you can take anything else. Flying a drone is like, there isn't anybody there. So who cares if you're flying a drone? But I think drone photography would be a lot of fun out there. And any kind of other gear you like. It's whatever you know what to take. Photographers come from all over the world to go there. It's written up all over the world. You can go online and look for photographs of the Salton Sea and find thousands of them. It's a lot of 20th century ruins that are disappearing. It's abandoned military bases. The art installations are basically Bombay Beach. It's like the early days of Burning Man, when it was on the beach in San Francisco back in the 60s. They used to build art out on the beach by the marina at Berkeley, and then they'd burn it down. That's how Burning Man got started. Then they moved it to Nevada. There's all the Mojave landscapes. There's agriculture towns, farms, geothermal plants. There's a lot of interesting stuff in different areas. And I drove around all over that area, and I'm going to talk about each one of the areas that I had time to go to. I spent about 4 days there. What's not there? There is no wildlife. Don't go there to photograph birds or anything else. They aren't there. The sea is toxic. They've all died off. There are no more fish die-offs like there were 4, 5, 6, 10 years ago, because there are no more fish. There are no birds, there are no bird sanctuaries, there's none of that. The dust blows, and the dust in the sea are toxic. Not toxic like you're going to fall over dead, but toxic like salts and metals and things like that that are in agriculture. You're not going to find a classic mountain or a classic landscape there. And you certainly won't find any kind of architecture that might be modern architecture, but there's all kinds of other architecture to photograph there. Little towns and agriculture towns and things like that. It's not curated, and it's not protected. It just sits there falling apart in the desert. It's not like Bodie at all. Accommodations, that's the hotel or motel I stayed in. That's the Brawley Inn. And it wasn't too bad. I mean, it's as good as many you find anywhere. There's like 1 or 2 places like that there. They had a swimming pool. It was full of construction workers when I was there in September, and people from the Marine bases. Westmoreland is just up the road from that, heading back toward the Salton Sea. Westmoreland isn't really a town. 500, 600 people there. and there's a grocery store and a few things like that. I think there is a motel there. I drove like 40 to 60 miles every day. I would get up and grab something to eat and go out and explore in the morning, grab lunch, go explore in the afternoon into the evening, and get back in the evening. And anywhere you go from Brawley is like 40 to 60 miles, but it's not Los Angeles driving. It's wide open. You just put the pedal down and go. The biggest thing you run into is the Border Patrol stops. I'll show you where the big Border Patrol stop is, and you have to slow down and go through it, and they ask you what you're doing and blah, blah, blah. But otherwise, the roads are very easy to drive on, and you just drive to where you're going to go. And I talked about the Border Patrol. There's Border Patrols patrolling around in the desert there also. Some of them followed me one night. I used Expedia, but you can use any online site and plan your accommodations. You're not going to find anything on the fly there. Don't plan to eat in fancy restaurants. You're not going out there. You can take food with you. You can buy food at fast food, grocery stores, gas station, convenience stores, truck stops, the few little restaurants. I never went into a restaurant. And there is this Red Rock Casino. It's about the size of 3 7-Elevens put together. But that's what you eat. I mean, maybe there's something else there, but you're not going there to eat. You're going there to explore. So food is just something you pick up on the fly. How you find things. That can be kind of fun. This website, shothotspots.com, and I'll put some of these websites and links on the video. It's an interactive site of where you go to photograph things. And each one of those black icons there, you can double click on it and it'll tell you what it is. And it'll show you photographs of people have taken and posted on there. So that's a lot of things around Salton Sea. Now, some of those I went to look at and they aren't even there anymore. So this is 4 or 5 years old. A lot of it is there and it's a great way to plan your trip. But you need to do probably a little bit more than that. But use those kind of things and decide before you go what you're going to do every day and where you're going to go that day. It makes it a lot easier. So plan online before you go. Again, there's no visitor centers, markers, signs, parking lots, too interesting places to photograph. It's just desert and water and ruins and a few businesses and a road. Some of the places that I got to, you kind of guess how to get there because I'll show a picture of the road, that road that runs by the little airplane on the lower quadrant of the map on the left side. There's a Navy base out there that I'm going to show some photographs of. So there's probably 20 or 30 roads that head off of that highway towards the Salton Sea. Some of them are business roads, some of them are state roads. And when I talk about a road, it's probably about 1.5 lanes wide of breaking up asphalt with sand blowing in on both sides of it. So that's a road, but they're not marked. And there's no real map to tell you how to get there. So you have to kind of find these areas that you think you want to go visit, like the Navy base and the old motel and things like that. And you look at the shape of the shoreline and you use your GPS maps and you use other maps, online maps, and you figure which road you're going to turn off on from the highway. Because there's no sign that's going to tell you to do that. And I guess that I hit that Navy base perfect because I looked at the shape of the shoreline and the GPS maps and I matched them up and I found it quite easily that way. But that's kind of what you have to do because there's no guides there. They're going to help you do it. Again, unmarked roads, abandoned roads, and you got to find them. And that's why it's nice to have 4-wheel drive, because some of these roads just are gone when they get up to the sea. And there's places where people have driven around them to go where you want to go to. And one of those places, I'll talk about the Navy base, the state of California stuck in one of these settling ponds right across the end of the road. So the road that used to go out to the old Navy base is now got this settling pond across the middle of it, and it's raised. It's up on a berm about 10, 12 feet high. But when you get to the end of the road, you can see the tracks that go off into the sand, basically, that gets you to the Navy base. And so you drive, you just follow the tracks that other people have made with your four-wheel drive to get out there. Now you could walk there. It would probably be a mile or two to walk around it and go. But, you know, when it's 105 and going to get dark, I'd rather drive. So these are some of the things you can see. I'm going to start with the Salton City. And you see on there the Sunny Bono Salton Sea National Wildlife. Maybe 15, 20 years ago, there was something there. It's at the end of the lake. There was a little wooden visitor centers and some wooden stands and some olive trees and stuff there. There was nothing else there. There might have been birds at one time. There might have been wildlife 20 years ago, but it isn't there. I don't know why that's still on the maps, but it is, and it doesn't mean anything because there's nothing to go see. I tried, I went and looked, but that's my report. This is next to the Chevron gas stop and library. That's kind of on Highway 86 as you're going down. It's an old motel that's been burned down and graffitied with a swimming pool. And it's a lot of fun to photograph. There's many, many photographs all over online of different photographs of this, of a chair sitting in the desert. It's fun to go out and walk around and see what you can find and get some interesting photographs. This is landscape photography at Salton Sea. For me personally, it's great fun because you're actually exploring something that's unusual. There's not a single person there. I discovered this by accident. I was eating lunch at the gas stop and I drove down because I saw a building that was the library there. And it was kind of new. I guess they got a little bit of government money to build a library. And I saw this motel there. And I thought, that's cool. So I went over there and explored it all and took pictures. But I think it's on some maps, and I know a lot of young people go out there and photograph, and you'll see a lot of these photographs, especially that chair sitting in the pool. This is the Chamber of Commerce. It might have been open once. This is in West Shores. This is one of the buildings there, and I asked somebody online what that reminded them of, and they said it looks like the outback of Australia. I've never been to the outback of Australia, but people say that's what it looks like. The fence around it is probably somebody bought this land and this house. And so they put up these chain link fences around some of them just to keep people from tearing them down or burning them down or whatever happens to them. This is off to the right side, kind of behind me from where I took that picture of the Chamber of Commerce. There was many, I took hundreds and hundreds of pictures. There was all kinds of more pictures there, but I'm not going to bore you with them. This is the old Navy base. And if you look at the shape of the shoreline there with that dog leg in it and the road that goes out to it, that's kind of how I use the GPS map to find it. And you turn off from Highway 86, which is that north-south road. And I hit it pretty good. There's a couple Navy bases actually there. This is one of them. They're long gone and long abandoned. But at one time, 50 years ago, they actually had Navy people stationed out there and flew planes over the Salton Sea and things like that. So this is the road that goes out to it. And it ends right up there where you see the weeds at the end. I drove along and I was looking for sand dunes. I was going to go photograph the sand dunes at the park, and I saw these sand dunes and the sun was going down. So I got my sand dune pictures that I liked. When I stopped along this road and got out, went and took pictures, the Border Patrol pulled up on a hill about 600-700 yards behind me to see what I was doing. So they patrolled this desert out there. It was a beautiful afternoon. It's very beautiful country. So this is after I drove around the entrance and out onto this hard packed salty ground. You can see a tripod there. I never used it. I took it out. I don't know why I had a tripod. These pilings and things like this are what's left of this thing called the Navy base. And I actually went out there as the sun was going down to get pictures in the evening. These trees must have had some kind of bird's nest in them. I don't know what those are, crow's nests or something. Nothing lives in them anymore. But in the dark, when I was coming back, I could use those backlit trees to know where I had to go because there was no road. I was just driving across that packed dirt. And I knew that I drove by them coming in. So I kind of headed in that direction as it got dark and turned around the end of them and found my way back pretty easily. These are some of the pilings out there. The sun was hitting them as it was going down, so I got a couple good black and white pictures. It was the night before the full moon in September last year. This probably, I think that's Bombay Beach on the other side, those lights. And I had gone out there explicitly to take pictures of the moonrise. And that breakwater there is part of the old Navy base. This is the sun going down. There's interesting pictures to take there with the silhouettes. That's a big boat loading ramp that runs down to it. This is just one of the pads that were there, one of the cement pads that's breaking up. This is where the road ended and where it started when I was heading back. This is a picture. It was much darker than this. This is a photograph, obviously, and you can pump up the light, but it looked pretty black when I was driving. I could see with my headlights. I took this picture through the windshield. You can see the headlights off there on the right. So this is not an unusual road there. That's why I say, you know, you're taking your family sedan out there may not be a good idea. Everybody goes to Bombay Beach. You know, that's where a lot of people have put these art shows, and it seems to be the place that attracts a lot of people. It's kind of iconic for Salton Sea. It's on the other side from the main highway that comes down. They maintain the sign there, that old 1950s sign. They have a fire station. And as you can see from the sign on the right side photograph, people go out there and get stuck, and then they have to call somebody, and there was no way you're going to find somebody there except maybe this guy put up a sign. He's probably the only tow truck around, and he tows the tourists out of there that don't know how to drive in sand. These are the only birds I ever saw there. I wanted to scare them away because that water is ugh. You don't want to get in that water, and it's all muck underneath it, and it's full of farm chemicals. So I felt very sorry for these birds. There used to be pelicans and fish and all kinds of stuff, even just a few years ago, but all of that is gone. And this is part of the art. And it makes beautiful dramatic sunsets and beautiful dramatic photography. And there were half a dozen photographers there when I was there in the middle of September. So I can only imagine what it's like when the weather's cooler. It's probably not near as much. It wouldn't be as much fun for me to go out there and do it with that many people, but other people may not bother them. This swing set out there is kind of, you've seen, there's probably 10,000 photographs of this online. People have had models go out there and sit on the swing and stuff. And talk about earning your money as a model. How do you get out there? Because you can step into that muck and go in up to your knee. And you want to be careful of that because it gets a crust over it. And I didn't go anywhere near it. I didn't feel like having to walk home to my car with muddy feet with toxins. But that swing set, everybody photographs it. It's kind of cool. And it's fun to do it in the morning and the evening. You can see some of the photographers that were there. This is the full moon rise. I cheated a little bit. I took a picture of the moon and put it over the white spot that was there in the photograph, but don't tell anybody. That's the right size it was according to the photograph, and that was with a telephoto lens. I had fun with a flash. They put up these little signs, these little vignettes. That's part of the art. This obelisk, and you can see this sign that says "Bring us back." That's the fish and pelicans. And they put up these little kind of buildings. There's a little bar and there's a little surf shop and stuff like that. They call it porch view, but they're fun to photograph with your flash. That's if you have a flash and you go somewhere like this, it's fun to play with it. I suggest you try it. You can get some interesting pictures. This is going back down to the art installation after it got dark. And there's a dirt road. That berm on the right-hand side goes up to the plateau that goes out to the lake. So the sea where I took those other photographs is off to the right there. One of those is the moon, obviously, and the other is the street light. Everything I shot with Olympus with a stabilized sensor. And some of my exposures were up to 2 seconds, and I handheld everything. It worked great. So I didn't bother with a tripod, even for those kind of long exposures. These are some of what they call the art installations. There's many, there's rooms, there's couches, there's all kinds of different stuff. People come out and they just build it and set it up with lights, and it's kind of fun. I was there totally by myself in the dark, wandering around, taking pictures of some of this stuff. It was very interesting. And there were a few people live out there in Bombay Beach. They live off to the right there behind these things. And there's one or two little businesses there, and you saw the fire station. So it's people come and go. Artists live there. People come from all over the world to see this stuff. Here's another one. A desert shores up there were north of that on Highway 86, where you see oasis and things like that. There used to be marinas up there. There are a few people that built houses, a little better houses than some of the others, and they complain to the state that it's dusty and nobody's doing anything, but nobody's going to do anything. Those grids are lots that the land speculators sold, and people tried to build there, tried to live there, and just walked away from it. So it's a ghost town in many ways. It's a modern 20th century ghost town. These are some of the buildings that have been abandoned. And they're slowly being destroyed. People set them on fire and they do graffiti and they break them up. So if you catch them and get them, you get some fun photographs, and they're interesting to see, but they really are disappearing. Some of them are chain link fenced. This is one of my favorite photographs. This was a beach where you saw the cars and the boats and things like that. That was off to the left of this. There was a marina. This was the marina where you saw those people in swimsuits and cars. This is what's left of it. There was about an 8-foot chain link fence in front of this palm tree. It said "State of California," blah, 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 stay out. I just walked around the end of it and went and took the picture because I wanted a picture of this palm tree. Some people had taken down the signs that said no trespassing, and made little icons and stacked them up with driftwood and stuff. So there's just nobody there. State, police, people, anybody. It's totally deserted. And I had no problem going to areas and photographing. I didn't get near in the water or go anywhere where I was going to get poisoned by something, but it's very interesting. This is kind of the few people that live there. It's what it looks like. a lot of these lots, you can go down there and buy for a couple $1,000s. You could buy that lot where that sign is if you want it. I don't know what you do with it. They put up power and street signs and grids and all that stuff about 50, 60 years ago. All the palm, even the palm trees, you know, there's no water. It's all really Mojave Desert. This is the same place. It's looking across that kind of a salt flat as it dries out. And the lake is receding, receding, receding. In a few years, there probably won't be anything out there. This is one of the few places where the bacteria was blooming. Obviously, I pumped up the colors in this, but it was very colorful. You get that red bacteria, the red tide. And there was kind of a little pond there. I think that's why they had the fences and the signs by the state of California to stay away from it, because, you know, you don't want people going out stepping in it. The other places that I want to see, I enjoy photographing farm country. That's one of my things. And this is Imperial Valley. What I saw there, unfortunately, was a lot of good growing of hay, which uses a ton of water because they've gotten free water from the Colorado River for a long time. They've cut back some. That's why there's a lot less water flowing into the Salton Sea. And there's a lot of power stations out there. Geothermal, there's geothermal plants all over in the farm country. And I drove around north of Brawley in different areas, but I didn't get south. I wanted to go to El Centro, but I didn't get a chance to go down there. These are some of the things. This park there is the Brawley New River Park. I was going to drive out to the sand dunes at Glamis, just where that Osprey crashed recently. That's a huge off-road area, those sand dunes. I mean, they're just covered with off-roaders in the winter. And I thought I'd get some sand dune pictures, but it was my last night there, and I didn't feel like driving 50 miles out in the desert where I'd never been before and try to figure out how to get a picture of the moonrise or something. So I went to this little park. It's called New River Park. And it was a very pleasant evening. It was about 98, 99. The sun was down. People were coming out running, and the kids were playing in the park. It was a summer night in the park. And I walked all around the park. I took a bunch of pictures. And it was a pleasant evening to spend there. That's the New River there on the right side. It's about as big as it is. So that's all the chemicals from the farms that are running into the sea. This is Brawley. Brawley was boarded up a little bit because of COVID. People were very careful with COVID there. A lot of signs, you know, you can't, and this was last September, don't come in the store without a mask, period. Things like that. So they took it seriously, which was nice to see. This was on a side street in Brawley. There were some repair shops and stuff. Some of the photo tours that go to the Salton Sea that take you around down there, one of the things they do is take you to Brawley to photograph. As you can see, it was September, and September is dove season, so they were recruiting the hunters that show up there. I can't imagine there's many doves, but there must be some. I think it's out around the farms where there's some water. And this is kind of what the farm country looks like. Just so people understand, farmland is private property, and the people that own the farmland do not want you to walk on their property for any reason. And photographers are not any more welcome on their land than hunters are. So shoot from the road. If you go out and wander in that field, they will have the sheriff on you if they see you. So that's just a thing to be aware of. It's fun to photograph it for me. I get lots of pictures that I like, but I don't walk on their land. This is one of the geothermal areas, and it was just covered with egrets. There were hundreds and hundreds of them. and you'll see these geothermal plants scattered around. You'll see this flat farmland, all of a sudden there'll be this plant out there in the middle of it. And the birds have left the Salton Sea, but the farm ditches and things like that. I saw turtles in the ditches and frogs and things like that. So there's life there that these egrets can eat. They were very skitterish, and I was using a 600mm lens from the road. I obviously didn't walk into the center, into the power station. And as I started to walk towards them, maybe 150 yards, they all took off. So if you take a long lens, you can get some interesting pictures like this. This is wildlife there, if you're interested. Next to the road there, this is where I went for lunch most times. You see the gas station, the Chevron gas station, the carving. The picture of the two palm trees is looking over towards the center part of the Salton Sea. And I sat outside and had lunch and took the picture of the palm trees. The flag is in Westmoreland. It's in front of a little mercado. I went in there to get a big hat. I hadn't taken a hat with me. I usually don't wear a hat, but it was hot enough and bright enough that I actually wore a hat. So I bought a big farm hat in there. The green man and the balloons are part of in front of a date shop.
Can I call you back? I'm watching.
Turn off your mic, Karen. In front of a date shop where you can get date shakes. And it was wonderful. And it was funny because it was a Middle Eastern shop. It was all Middle Eastern imports and things like that. And they had fabulous date shakes. And then the other one is right by my hotel. And that's back of an Albertsons. And if you look straight ahead past the palm tree, that's where my hotel was. And somebody put up an "I love you" sign there. That's a heart, but you can't quite see it. I would go over there in the morning, eat coffee and something to eat. That was my breakfast. Then the other place I went to was OCOTILLO Wells. And that's one of the heartlands of the off-roaders. But I wanted to go out there and see it because off of Highway 78, or not Highway 78, if you go to OCOTILLO Wells and you turn left there, you go out into the desert. There's supposed to be an old B-24 that somebody has made the fuselage into some kind of art thing that people photograph. So I went looking for that and ended up exploring OCOTILLO Wells, which was fun. It's basically lots. There's hundreds and hundreds of little lots scattered all over the side of the mountains and the hills there. There was nobody there because it's all off-roaders. They park their SUVs or their motorhomes. Some of them have little houses and they come there during off-roading season and live there and do whatever. That's their thing. So this is kind of what they look like. As you can see, there's more than a few of them show up. These are off the internet, obviously. And in the area there, you can see some of the lots. There were a lot more than this, actually. Just scattered all over out there. This is the airport. You can see the sign, and the one next to the stop sign, to the right of the stop sign in the picture in the upper left, out there is a little thing that says it's the airport. I went out there and there was a hill I went up because I saw some flagpoles and stuff on top of a hill. And I started to drive up it. And I have crappy tires on my Subaru. They aren't really off-road tires and they're worn a little bit. And I didn't let the air out of them. So as I went up the hill, I could feel it was going to start to slip. And the road I was going up the hill on was about a car length and a half wide, and it dropped off on both sides. So I turned around. It took me about 20 tries forward and back, forward and back, forward and back to turn around and come back down. I parked and walked back up. It was a Vietnam Veterans Memorial. And I took a picture of my car coming back down. The other picture there, that's kind of the runway out there. It's not a runway, it's a dirt way. But the National Guard comes in there sometimes, and I imagine there's a few general aviation pilots that come once in a while. Off-road is everywhere there. If you look at the picture on the right, you can see the trails all over the hills there. And there's tons of them everywhere. And there's a little bit of the off-road things sitting out there waiting for it to start. And you may have seen this. This is kind of where all the off-roaders hang out. There's 2 or 3 of these places like this, but I've seen other pictures of this iron door. This is not any kind of picture other than just a snapshot. I wanted to capture what it looked like where I was. And thank you. What draws us to the desert is search for something intimate and remote. And it's a very interesting place to go to.